The Kwangdong Army Epidemic Prevention and Water Supply Department, known as Unit 731. This top-secret unit of the Japanese Army experimented on human subjects to develop bacteriological weapons during the war. The organization remained hidden behind a heavy veil for decades. Evidence that sheds light on its existence was uncovered in Moscow.
Это оригиналы магнитных записей Хабаровского процесса 1949 года.
The tapes contain 22 hours of testimony from people involved with Unit 731. They are the record of a military tribunal of officers and members of the unit held in the former Soviet Union 4 years after the end of the war. Witnesses testified that living human beings were used as the subjects of experiments in the development of biological weapons. Unit 731 conducted its experiments at a secret research compound in the former Manchurian region of northeastern China. It is estimated that more than 3,000 people were used as living subjects for experiments and lost their lives. Why was human experimentation carried out on such a large scale? We gathered hundreds of documents from within Japan and abroad. What emerges is not simply the role of the military, but the fact that medical scientists from elite institutions like the University of Tokyo and Kyoto University directed the human experiments. This bacteriologist from Kyoto University studied the highly lethal typhoid bacillus. Experiments were conducted with pathogens packed in bombs intended to cause mass infection. This medical scientist is said to have conducted experiments that intentionally caused frostbite on the hands and feet of his subjects.
その中国人の手を見ますと、3人は手の指がもう全部黒くなって落ちておりました。残りの2人はただ骨だけ残っておりました。
Medical scientists with specialized knowledge were mobilized and organized to carry out experiments on a large scale.
薬学博士だとか理学博士だから731部隊って言えばね、そういったその、各界の権威が集まってましたよ。
Why did these scientists, ostensibly devoted to preserving life, soil their hands with human experimentation? We examine the truth behind Unit 731, now coming to light 7 decades later. Harbin, a major city in northeastern China. This cosmopolitan city was built by Russians and became a base for the Japanese Imperial Army during the war. 20 kilometers on the outskirts of Harbin, the remains of the headquarters of Unit 731 are still standing. The ruins of destroyed buildings. The buildings were blown up at the end of the war to conceal evidence of the unit's existence. This photograph shows the facility. The unit carried out its top secret research on an expansive site that was many square kilometers in size. The 3-story square building contained numerous state-of-the-art laboratories, complete with heating and cooling systems. In the center, concealed from outside view, was a jail that held the people who were used as subjects for human experimentation. Unit 731 was established in 1936 in a territory where Japan had established the puppet state of Manchukuo. The development of biological weapons was begun to counter the military threat posed by the Soviet army along the nearby border. The unit was led by a medical officer, Shiro Ishii. At that time, the use of biological weapons was prohibited by international treaty. But development was carried out on the grounds that research for defensive purposes was possible. The unit comprised about 3,000 people at its peak. Ishii recruited medical scientists from universities throughout Japan to assist the development effort. The research conducted by Unit 731 was concealed at the end of the war. Its activities became public 4 years after the war ended, at a war crimes trial in the former Soviet Union, the Khabarovsk Tribunal. Placed on trial were 12 men, including officers of Unit 731 and of the Kwangtung Army. Most of the medical scientists had evacuated to Japan, but these men were delayed, and they were seized by the Soviet army. Until now, only a written record of this trial had been released by the Soviet Union, and some had claimed that it was fabricated. In these newly discovered audio archives, core members of Unit 731 give detailed testimony on the human experiments.
Расскажите суду максимально подробно, в каких экспериментах над людьми вы принимали участие. 18年の生だと記憶しています。ワクチンの効力検定をやるために中国人、それから満人を約50名余り人体実験に使用しました。砂糖水を作って砂糖水の中にジブス菌を入れて、そしてそれを強制的に飲ませて細菌に感染をさせて、そしてその人体実験によって亡くなった人は12、3名だと記憶しています。
The testimony described a series of human experiments using highly lethal germs carried out under the direction of medical scientists.
ペストの病の実験をする建物があります。その建物の中に約4、5名の囚人を入れまして、家の中にペストの実を散布させて、そしてその後、その実験に使った囚人は全部、ペストにかかったと言いました。
This is a photograph of Chinese prisoners that a member of Unit 731 kept. People like these were sent to the unit to be used as experimental subjects. At that time, people from China and the Soviet Union who resisted Japan were called bandits, and the Japanese army seized them as spies or political criminals. This document was discovered in Russia. It notes that prisoners who were deemed to have no value as counter-spies or for other purposes were sent to Unit 731 without being put on trial. Testimony at the tribunal established that there were women and children among the prisoners.
Были ли среди подопытных заключенных женщины?
おりました。
Были.
おそらくロシア人だと思います。
Одна из этих женщин была с грудным ребенком?
持っておりました。
После того, когда человек подвергался заражению соответствующими бактериями, его лечили в тюрьме отряда или нет?
治療します。
А после того, когда он выздоравливал, что с ним происходило?
相当長き期間を置きました後に、また他の実験に供されるのが常であります。
И так делалось до смерти человека?
そういうことになります。
Да, так делалось.
Следовательно, за все время существования тюрьмы, время известное вам, ни один из заключенных живым оттуда не вышел.
その通りであります。
Именно так.
How were the medical scientists who were recruited from Japan's universities involved in these human experiments? We found a former member of the unit who could tell us about what took place. Takeshi Misumi was 14 when he became a member of Unit 731. He agreed to an interview for the first time because he wants the truth to be known. Misumi's work involved servicing the aircraft that were attached to the unit. He helped transport prisoners to a remote test site and witnessed the medical scientists' experiments. The prisoners were referred to as logs.
頭は丸坊主。もう全部変わってしまって丸坊主。丸太はみんな丸坊主。杭を打ってね、こうずーっとこう杭を打ってそこへ丸太をつないでおくんです。実験の計画に沿って憲兵がこう連れて行って何番の杭に誰を乗っける縛るとかってつなぐとかってやるわけね。
Misumi and others were part of what was called the Youth Corps, where they were given a year of training in bacteriology. They were taught by Japan's leading scientists, recruited from universities across the country.
薬学博士だとか理学博士、医学博士なんていうのがいっぱいいますからね。だから731部隊って言えばね、そういったその、各会の権威が集まってましたよ。揃ってましたよ。
Kikuta Tsunaga is another former member of Unit 731. Until now, the scope of involvement of medical scientists has not been clear, but Tsunaga has a document that sheds light on the subject. It is a directory compiled by an association of Unit 731 veterans after the war.
京大、東大医学部、そういうとこが多いですよね。
The directory included the names and home universities of the medical scientists who were mobilized by Unit 731. These scientists, who were referred to as technicians, were civilian employees of the military. We used this document, along with other extant directories and academic papers, to confirm the names and institutional background of these scientists. Here is the breakdown of the results we produced. Kyoto Imperial University was the source for the largest number of scientists, followed by Tokyo Imperial University. At a minimum, some 40 scientists were mobilized by Unit 731, coming from at least 10 universities and research institutes. The scientists who served as technicians had the same status as medical officers and formed the core of Unit 731. The elite medical scientists directed the research conducted by the unit. Why did so many scientists get involved with Unit 731? Our research uncovered a hidden story in the relationship between universities and the military unit. Kyoto University, then known as Kyoto Imperial University, supplied 11, the largest confirmed number of technicians for Unit 731. The university allowed us access to the archives where official documents are stored.
文部省と京都大学の間の往復文書を年ごとに閉じていると、そういった資料ですね。
We discovered here, for the first time, evidence of financial transactions between the university and Unit 731. As compensation for bacteriological research, a payment worth about $50,000 today was made to an individual scientist. The man receiving the payment was Kanao Tabei, an assistant professor in the medical school. Tabei carried out research on the highly lethal typhoid bacillus. Soon after Unit 731 was established, he joined its staff and was put in charge of one of the research teams. A soldier who worked on his team described the experiments they conducted.
Ну и что было с этими несчастными, которые съели эти фрукты?
Tabei was the scientist who directed these human experiments. At that time, 7 medical scientists from Kyoto University had been sent to work at the unit. Our reporting suggested that some professors sent their junior colleagues to work at Unit 731. One of the most influential of these professors was Shozo Toda, who twice served as the dean of the School of Medicine. We discovered that Toda obtained substantial research funding from tying up with the military. This was documented in a report on Toda's research activities. He received 8,000 yen for research commissioned by the military on cold weather clothing. Another 7,000 yen was paid for research on hygiene in Army-controlled territories. The research fees totaled an amount that would be about $2.5 million today. Toda developed ever stronger ties to the military. The origins of this relationship can be traced back to Japan's advance into Manchuria in 1931. A puppet state called Manchukuo was established and embraced by the Japanese public. Spurred by popular opinion, universities began to dispatch doctors to work in Manchurian hospitals. The universities competed to fill posts on the continent for the purpose of fighting the spread of disease. A large number of doctors were sent from Kyoto University, where Toda was based. Competing with the University of Tokyo as well as elite private universities, Kyoto eventually doubled the number of doctors it dispatched. At that time, Toda spoke about how doctors should contribute to the country's efforts to expand into Manchuria.
A tremendous challenge has been presented to us: to become leaders in the effort to open up previously undeveloped areas of Northern Asia.
In this context, Unit 731 expanded its influence over the universities. The unit was given a massive budget by the national government.
Какие суммы ассигновывались на содержание отряда?
確実な数字はただいま記憶しておりませんが、大体の数字を申しますと、昭和15年度におきましては、大体1000万円に近い予算が使われておったように記憶しております。
The annual budget was reported to be about $300 million in today's figures. The man in charge of managing this budget was the leader of Unit 731, Shiro Ishii. A graduate of Kyoto University Medical School, Ishii developed a close relationship with Toda, one of the top professors there. Toda is said to have consulted with Ishii on personnel decisions.
When Professor Toda came to Tokyo, he often met with Ishii and me. We discussed research issues and personnel matters, and the professor worked on behalf of the university and his students. To that end, he often made trips to the occupied territory on the Chinese mainland.
We found an account that suggested that Toda understood the content of the research that was conducted by Unit 731. According to the reminiscence of another of his students, Toda made repeated visits to facilities in China that were associated with Unit 731.
When Professor Toda visited, senior officials and the top officers would gather for an academic seminar, and they would discuss the unit's research in a friendly manner.
We have confirmed that 8 medical scientists were dispatched to Unit 731 from the laboratories of professors closely connected to Toda, from a total of 11 who came from Kyoto University. After Kyoto University, the University of Tokyo provided the next largest number of scientists for Unit 731. In response to our queries, the university stated, "We do not acknowledge our active involvement as an institution." Our reporting brought to light the fact that officers of the University of Tokyo had dealings with Unit 731 leader Ishii. Mataro Nagayo was a medical scientist who served as president of what was then known as Tokyo Imperial University. With the permission of his heirs, we obtained copies of Nagayo's personal journals. The journals record that while he served as university president, Nagayo attended a lecture by Ishii, and that after he stepped down, he visited the headquarters of Unit 731 in 1940.
I proceeded to the Kwandun Army headquarters, visited the chief surgeon, then met the commander. In Pingfang, I visited the Ishii unit, and Colonel Ishii gave me a tour of its operations. I was given a chicken hot pot feast.
Records of that visit list the names of researchers who had been dispatched from Tokyo Imperial University. We know that at least 6 scientists were recruited from the University of Tokyo during the war. This photograph was taken at a microbiology conference at the university. Surrounding Ishii were prominent professors who had gathered from across the country. As university leaders developed connections with Ishii, the most promising researchers were recruited for his unit. Among the medical scientists, one wrote in great detail about how he was dispatched to serve in Unit 731. Hisato Yoshimura, an instructor at the Kyoto University Medical School, became a medical scientist in the hope of saving many lives through basic medical research. Though he wanted to continue his research in Japan, he recalled that he was unable to defy the orders of his professor.
There was a sense that a deal had already been reached with the Army. My professor suddenly ordered me to provide technical assistance to the Army in Manchuria. To abandon the research I was so passionate about was more than I could bear, and I immediately refused. But my professor told me, "Given the situation Japan faces, refusing to do this is out of the question. If you don't join the Army, I'll expel you, so get lost."
Yoshimura was sent here, to the top-secret laboratories of Unit 731. It is estimated that the number of prisoners brought here for use in experiments reached a peak of 600 annually. A specialist in physiology, Yoshimura was ordered to conduct research on frostbite. Soldiers in the Kwandung Army often suffered frostbite from exposure to intense cold. Testimony at the tribunal described human experiments that were conducted to study frostbite and develop countermeasures.
第一部の吉村技師から聞きましたところによりますと、極寒期において、約零下20度ぐらいのところに、監獄におります人間を外に出しまして、そこに、大きな扇風機をかけまして、風を送ってその囚人の手を凍らして凍傷を人工的に、作って研究しておるということを言いました。そうして凍傷が人工的に、できた場合は、小さな、棒でその指を叩くと板のように硬くなると、吉村は言っておりました。
Yoshimura's research, using individuals who were subjected to frostbite, formed the basis for an academic paper the scientist presented at a medical conference in Manchuria. The paper presented the results of experiments where subjects were exposed under a range of conditions. Having fasted 2 or 3 days or going without sleep, subjects were observed after soaking their fingers in freezing ice water for 30 minutes. At the tribunal, testimony was heard from an MP who actually saw people who had been subjects of frostbite experiments in Yoshimura's lab.
その人体実験を自分で見たのは1940年の確か12月頃だったと思います。まずその研究室に入りますと、長い椅子に5名の中国人のその囚人が腰を掛けております。それで、その中国人の手を見ますと、3人は手の指がもう全部黒くなって落ちておりました。残りの 2人は指がやはり黒くなってただ骨だけ残っておりました。それは吉村技師のその時の説明によりますと、凍傷実験の結果こういうことになったということを聞きました。
Kanao Tabei from Kyoto University, who had received substantial funding from Unit 731. His research was progressing from the laboratory to the stage of practical application. What he was developing was a bacteriological bomb. Research on causing mass infection had begun. The effectiveness of the weapon was tested on groups of more than 10 prisoners at a time, according to a member of Tabei's staff.
あんたの演習場で自分の参加した実験は中スキンであります。それは瀬戸物で作った大砲の弾と同じ型をした細菌弾であります。空中でもって爆破して地上に噴霧状態になってその菌が落ちるようになっていました。そして菌が地上に落ちたところを非実験者を通過させたのと、それから冬に強制的に縛り付けておいて、その上でもって爆破して頭の上から菌をかぶせたのと2通りの方法が行われました。大部分の者が感染して4人か5人か亡くなりました。
The scientists used careful scientific methodology to conduct their research, but they violated their commitment to preserving life when they engaged in human experimentation. Public sentiment within Japan provided the impetus for them to cross this ethical line. The Sino-Japanese War broke out in 1937. Fierce resistance on the Chinese side resulted in increasing casualties on the Japanese side. The Japanese military took to calling the resisting Chinese bandits and began a campaign to stamp out the enemy. Both the government and the mass media emphasized Japanese casualties and spurred hatred toward the Chinese. Extremely violent bandits, the headlines read. Decimate the bandits. Public opinion strongly supported the delivery of punishment by the military. Hostility toward the bandits grew more intense. Scholars were not immune to the atmosphere of the times. Beyond the scope of Unit 731, feelings of disdain for the bandits spread through academic circles. Documents that reflected this disdain were discovered at Hokkaido University. This journal was published by a research association under the auspices of the wartime Ministry of Health and Welfare. The transcript of a lecture given by a professor who studied human chromosomes. He spoke openly of how Manchurian bandits were used as living subjects of research.
It wasn't a question of revenge, but since bandits were killing people, I began to consider whether they shouldn't be used as subjects. Dead people are of absolutely no use. The condition of their chromosomes deteriorates quickly. The sacrifice of the life of one bandit certainly does not lack meaning. I can say categorically that superb specimens like these are not normally obtainable.
Takeshi Misumi, who was enlisted in Unit 731 at age 14. He remembers being told that bandits faced the death penalty, so it was acceptable to use them as experimental subjects.
こういう世の中、こういう時代なんだから、そうしなきゃ俺たちがやられるんだよと。そういった考えでしたね。だから口には出せないです。かわいそうだとかなんとかってことは、見てもね、口に出せないです。出したら非国民だって。やられちゃう。そういった雰囲気というか、そういった一般的な風潮がそうだったんです。
The Sino-Japanese War bogged down in the early 1940s. In the midst of this, Unit 731 began to put its bacteriological weapons to military use. Pathogens were dispersed at least 3 times on several cities in central China. Attacks using bacteriological weapons were prohibited by international treaty, but Japan had not ratified the treaty and carried out the attacks in secret.
私がおりました間のことを申しますと、昭和16年に第1回、それから昭和7年に、1回、九州において第731部隊の派遣隊は中国の軍隊に対して細菌武器を使用しました。
Pathogens were also dispersed on Chinese villages for the purpose of spreading infection among civilians, according to the testimony.
The 使われる細菌は主としてペスト菌、コレラ菌、カラチウス菌であることが決定しました。ペスト菌は主としてペストのみの形で使われました。でその他のものはそのまま水源とか井戸とか貯水池というようなところに散布されたのであります。
あの当時現地に中国人の捕虜収容所が2カ所ありました。その人員は約3000名と言われていました。そのマント作りに参加しました。少し冷やしてからそれに注射器でもって菌を注射しました。
Что дальше сделали с этими 3000 булочек?
その収容所へ持ってきてそれを各人に 食べるように言って渡して、そして
Ну хорошо, а как потом поступили с этими китайскими военнопленными после того, когда их покормили отравленными бактериями булочками?
その現地でもって会話しました。
Тем, чтобы вызвать массовую эпидемию тифа и паратифа, не так ли?
はい、自分はそのように聞きました。
Then, at the end of the war, on August 9th, 1945, the Soviet Union invaded Manchuria. Unit 731 began an immediate withdrawal. In order to conceal evidence, the unit killed all of the remaining prisoners. The research laboratories were completely destroyed. The medical scientists were the first to be sent back to Japan, traveling on a specially provided train. Misumi was told never to tell anyone about the secret unit. At that time, he was ordered to help dispose of the corpses.
So 死体の処理に少年隊こいして引っ張られていって、死体の処理を各独房から引っ張り出して、で中庭で鉄骨で井桁組んでガソリンぶっかけて焼いたわけ。焼いてね、全部焼き殺して骨だけにして、今度骨を拾うの。いや、戦争っていうのはこんなものかと。戦争ってのは絶対するもんじゃないと。つくづくそう思いましたね。本当にね、一人で泣いた。
The medical scientists who directed human experimentation were quickly returned to Japan. After the war, they were never prosecuted for engaging in those activities. The American forces that occupied Japan granted immunity to members of Unit 731 in exchange for obtaining scientific data from the human experiments. Shozo Toda, who is believed to have sent many of his colleagues to the unit, became president of Kanazawa University. While never discussing his involvement with Unit 731, he became a leading figure in medical science circles. Kanao Tabei, who developed bombs for delivering typhoid germs, became a full professor at Kyoto University and an authority in bacteriology. The scientist who researched the nature of frostbite, Hisato Yoshimura, also became a professor. Throughout his life, he continued to assert, "I did not conduct inhumane experiments."
Within the military, I researched the question of how we could protect soldiers from frostbite and freezing to death, following orders from the unit leader. I never lost my conscience or turned into a devil.
Those who were involved maintained their silence, and the existence of Unit 731 became a taboo subject. Today, 72 years later, that history is taking on renewed relevance in Japan. The Science Council of Japan has a long-standing policy that scientists will not engage in research for military purposes. However, a rapid increase in research funding from the Ministry of Defense has sparked debate over whether this prohibition should be relaxed.
その軍事研究イコール兵器研究ではないですよと、兵器研究ではない、軍事研究っていうのはもうちょっと幅の広いものだと、こういうふうな認識じゃないかなと私は思っております。
At this meeting, the history of Unit 731 and the development of the atomic bomb were cited as two examples where science was used for questionable ends.
科学者の責任ということです。科学者は戦争に動員されたのではなくて、むしろ歴史を見てくると科学者が戦争を残酷化してきたという歴史があると思います。
The history of Unit 731 raises questions not only for scientists, but for each of us as well. It presents the reality of how our country, in pushing forward on the road to war, crossed lines that as humans we ought never to cross. At the end of the newly uncovered audio recordings, there are statements from defendants that convey their feelings as they complete their testimony. The medical officer, Tomio Karasawa, was responsible for cultivating the bacteria used in the human experiments. He testified that he only became aware of the weight of his crimes after the war was over.
自分は現在平凡な人間といたしまして、自分の実際の心の中に思っておることを少し申してみたいと思います。私には現在日本に82になります母と妻並びに2名の子供がございます。なお私は自分の犯した罪の非常に大なることを自覚しております。そうして終始残業し後悔をしております。私は将来生まれ変わってもし余生がありましたならば、自分の行いました悪事に対しまして生まれ変わった人間として人類のために尽くしたいと思っております。
僕はある事件に怒りを感じていた。相模原市の障害者施設で19人が亡くなった事件。逮捕された元職員が語った。障害者は不幸を作ることしかできない。3歳年下の妹あゆみは重い知的障害と脳性麻痺がある障害者。僕はあゆみと暮らしてきて不幸と感じたことはなかった。
NHK World TV from Japan.
Stay tuned for more hot topics from Japan on NHK Newsline. Hello.